Welcome back, beautiful souls. I'm Anna. I am the owner of Adhd UK Photography. I specialize in maternity, newborn, and family photography. And this is Frames of Life podcast, where we explore what it means to live life with more clarity and purpose. Thank you so much to Nationwide Renewables for providing this beautiful podcast room. Today's makeover was done by Beauty by Phoenixa. Thank you so much for your support, guys. Today I want to talk to the woman who's been carrying at some point of her life the world on her shoulders, juggling business, family, 1,000 of daily decisions, while quietly wondering that there is something different about her brain. The woman who spent years thinking that she is just not organized enough, not focused enough, not enough. If you ever felt like you are drowning in your own potential, like there is this brilliant creative mind trapped into a fog of overwhelm, this conversation is definitely for you. We are diving deep into ADHD in women, particularly those who are discovering this truth about themselves later in life, very often during the hormonal storm of perimenopause. Because sometimes the most profound clarity comes not from having all the answers, but from finally asking the right questions about ourselves. I am joined today with Hatty, an ADHD coach who specializes in helping women like us to transform this beautiful chaos into purposeful action. Because you deserve to thrive, not only survive, in the magnificent complexity of your own mind. Let's begin. Hello, Hatty.
Hello. I am so glad to have you here. Thank you so much for finally coming to this studio. It took us a while to arrange the podcast due to your very busy schedule.
Yes,
but
I'm very sorry about that.
No, but I'm really happy. Thank you so much for coming and sharing all your stories with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Hatty. Can you please share a bit about your own journey and what led you to become an ADHD coach specifically for this group?
Well, 2 years ago, I suffered a panic attack, an extreme panic attack, and I felt that I couldn't continue in my life. I had 2 children, busy working mum, a full-time job in marketing. I'm also a DJ as well, so I was working at weekends. And something tipped me over the edge. My mother was diagnosed with an illness, and that little piece of bad news that was profound, but it just shattered my world. I couldn't cope. Everything just built up into a huge mess, and I just felt that I couldn't function as a human being. I had a huge panic attack. I went to the doctor with anxiety, what I thought it was anxiety. He said, I think you have something more serious going on when I described my symptoms. So I wasn't able to focus, I couldn't concentrate, I couldn't remember things. I was struggling in a way that I had never experienced before, even to do the most basic things. I was underperforming at work, and I couldn't manage my emotions. I couldn't wake up in the morning, I couldn't go to sleep in the middle of the night. I was waking up with racing thoughts and unable to get a hold on my head, and everything just felt like it was falling apart for me. So the doctor was really kind, and thankfully for me, his daughter, who was about my age, who was also a mother, she had experienced similar symptoms and had just been through the ADHD diagnostic assessment. So he asked if I would mind being referred. Initially I said it can't be that, so I'm perimenopausal. I was already taking HRT at that point, so I just thought it was perimenopause. And he said, I think there's something more serious. And when indeed I did get diagnosed, I scored really highly on all the diagnostic criteria, and I'd had ADHD and ASD all my life. My whole life just made sense. And it can also make you feel like you're grieving for the time of your life, the years that have passed where you didn't receive the support that you needed as a neurodivergent woman. And that can be very hard to reconcile with. So when I went through a process of healing and being medicated and getting therapy and receiving ADHD coaching myself, I decided that to avoid that feeling of grief, to do something useful and positive with this new realization. So I decided that my life's purpose was to train as an ADHD coach and help other women going through the same experience, because there are thousands.
Yes, it is very true. But how ADHD show up in women specifically who are diagnosed a bit later in their life? Like what kind of symptoms exactly you would say you were having as well, right?
Yeah, ADHD is one of those things that shows up differently in every single person with ADHD. There's an expression, if you've met one person with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD. There are 3 different types of ADHD. So there's hyperactive, there's inattentive, and there's combined.
And I think also, sorry for interrupting you, that people these days, they don't have the bigger picture, because when we think about ADHD, we are imagining in our head a naughty boy who can't focus at school, but this is not the case anymore.
Absolutely. A lot of the symptoms of ADHD present themselves in women our age, very similar to menopause. So inattentive ADHD might come across as brain fog, inability to focus, inability to regulate pace. We may have racing thoughts, or we may be zoned out and can't think of anything. So it's an extreme, it's called attention deficit, but there's no deficit of attention. There's too much attention, and there's an ability to regulate that attention. So you might be hyper-focused and going a million miles an hour in your life, juggling loads of things, spinning loads of plates, but there will be an equal and opposite reaction. You will burn out or drop out. You will be completely unable to function as a human being. It's not a linear condition, it's extremes. They call it a spiky profile. You fluctuate up and down in your ability to perform those executive function tasks, which is mostly adulting, and being a parent or working, being busy, all the things we have to juggle. You will find with ADHD, you may be amazing at some of those things, which is what makes it quite tricky to diagnose, because most ADHDers have learnt coping techniques and strategies that only last so long before hormones disrupt those coping strategies, and then things fall apart. And that's what happens very commonly in women our age.
Why do so many women are diagnosed actually around the perimenopause?
Well, the reason why this is happening is because simply they were missed as children, because the diagnostic criteria was based on boys, and the intersection of that is usually white boys, and these diagnostic criteria were created several decades ago. So the symptoms that present in girls are typically very different to boys. Boys can be very hyperactive, and that was that kind of cliche of boys bouncing off the walls in classrooms and being naughty and not being able to listen. With girls, it presents very differently, and the typical symptom in girls is inattentive ADHD, zoning out, not being able to focus, not being able to pay attention. So when you combine that with the expectations on women as well, there's an expectation that women are caregivers, we're organisers, we are able to juggle lots of things. Multitasking is something that is a badge lots of women are expected to wear, I think, and that is completely at odds with how ADHD presents itself. So when they get to perimenopause, they've learned a lot of coping strategies and techniques, but when estrogen levels drop in women, so does dopamine. And the dopamine in the brain is the thing that we struggle to regulate. We don't have enough dopamine as it is, and when dopamine levels drop, that means that our coping mechanisms that we've learned through our lives, which is called masking, just don't work anymore. And that's where I was. I was at the point where I was having panic attacks. I couldn't function in the most basic way. And I actually thought I was losing my mind. I thought I was going crazy, because the things that I couldn't do were really, really simple things that I'd always managed to do before. But it was, in fact, my hormones that were disrupting my dopamine levels, and therefore the ADHD symptoms just became completely unmanageable.
Hatty, thank you so much for sharing this really personal story behind what you are doing at the moment. I feel like this is really a privilege to have you here. Seriously, thank you so much.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share this, because I feel that so many women feel very isolated and alone, doubting themselves. And I just wanted to say to everybody who feels that way that you're not alone. There are so many people going through the same thing, and go and get help. And it's very, very difficult. Now there's long waiting lists of people who realise that they may need that help, but keep persisting with your GP. They're the first route. And if your GP isn't supportive, see a different GP.
Yeah, yeah. And this is the reason why I wanted you to be here, because I do realize there is a lot of women who need your help. Thank you.
Thank you.
How does being a parent and business owner compound all the challenges of late diagnosed ADHD? Because I think this is something what is going to be very beneficial for people to hear.
Well, the main function of a parent and a business owner is to perform what is known as executive function. There's a part of the brain called executive function at the front of the brain that's responsible for planning and prioritizing and regulating and processing the world around us and our responses to external stimuli. It affects our ability to manage time, to judge distance, time, spatial awareness, but mainly anything relating to parenting, which is organising, planning, short-term working memory, which is the ability to jump from one task to another very quickly. All of those things can be impaired with ADHD. We have a developmental impairment in our brains of up to 30% in those executive functions. That doesn't mean that we definitely have 30% deficiency, but we can have up to 30% slower development in the brain. So it can be that some days we are very good at those things and some days we're not. We're very responsive to our environments and external stresses as well. So the challenges of being a parent are we're always running around, we never sat still, we're always planning ahead. We've got to think who's going to eat what next, we've got to feed them, we've got to clothe them, we've got to do all the admin from school. There's a huge amount of mental load associated with parenting and the organisation and running of a household as well. We have to remember to pay bills on time. We have to make sure that we're saving up for future financial goals. We have to make sure everybody's got clean clothes, that people's shoes still fit them, that people have been to the hairdressers. There's a lot of demands on our executive functions as parents. So that in itself is a set of life skills that we're kind of conditioned to have, but ADHDers will struggle with elements of that. And then when you throw into the mix business ownership as well, we are wearing a different hat for that, aren't we? We are presenting ourselves to the world in a version of ourselves that we're hoping will succeed. So maybe there's something going on with our identity. And ADHDers are very, very good at being lots of things to lots of people because we're relentless people pleasers and we want to do well. ADHDers want to make people feel good. So that's a tremendous positive in being a business owner. We have something of value to offer other people. But when you think about all the admin relating to owning a business, the technical tax returns, spreadsheets, all of those things, all the apps and software that we now use, that can be extremely daunting to ADHDers. When you think of your mind as an ADHDer, it can feel sometimes like someone's shaking a snow globe and all the little feathers are flying around. That can feel very difficult to manage alongside the challenges of being a parent and that everyday routine, those long-term planning goals and making sure everybody is well cared for. So you can see how when you get those two things together in the mix, compounded by perimenopause, where you've got a drop in estrogen levels, which will have physical symptoms, but mental and emotional dysregulation associated with that. And if there's underlying ADHD, the ADHD will feel all those things much more intensely, and there'll be much more stress, a much lower threshold and tolerance for managing stress. So it's a bit of a perfect storm when you think of it like that. And that's why I work with a lot of women who are in perimenopause who identify as ADHD. You don't need a diagnosis or a piece of paper to identify with those symptoms. And we look at ways of keeping those things under control and managing life better so that you're not just managing in a practical sense, but you're actually enjoying your life.
Talking about coaching, what exactly is ADHD coaching and how it is different from the therapy or just general coaching?
Well, therapy firstly looks at the past. That is therapeutic, that is psychoanalytical. So that is not something that a coach should ever address unless they're trained to do so. Coaching looks at the future and it looks at practical strategies for managing and compartmentalizing the condition moving forward. So I would always recommend anybody who's newly diagnosed to get support from a therapist as well as having coaching. You need to deal with childhood trauma as well as deal with practical strategies moving forward. And every single person with a neurodivergent condition that's late diagnosed will have experienced childhood trauma just from being a neurodivergent person living in a neurotypical world without gaining the right support. There will be, by the age of 12, your average child with ADHD has received on average 20,000 more negative messages than a neurotypical child. And that damage, those little paper cuts, will amount to a wound inside, which will take years and years to heal. So it's essential to get the right mental health support in order to reconcile with the diagnosis. Where ADHD coaching is different to normal life coaching is that it's a safe space for the coachee to explore their relationship with ADHD and understand how ADHD shows up for them in their life. Often, someone with ADHD will never have had the opportunity to actually unpack that and explore those feelings around themselves, their relationships with other people, their relationships with the world that they live in. So ADHD coaching gives someone a safe space to explore that. We do work on strategies and actionable ways to improve the experience, but it's different to regular coaching because regular coaching is very much about goal setting and accountability for reaching those goals. Now, I do offer that to my coachees if that's what they want, but a lot of the time ADHD coaching is based on a test and learn. You might think, there's a lot of advice given to ADHDers on social media, which it doesn't resonate very well with me, because there seems to be, as if these people are struggling to get organised, they should just get this app or download this tool or buy a new planner, or perhaps you should use time blocking or keep a diary, as if ADHDers have never tried these things before. And what that can result in is compounding feelings of shame for ADHDers, because the brain isn't wired like that. It's not the same as giving someone who's neurotypical advice on being more organised. It's not a lack of willpower, it's not a lack of ability, it's almost too much ability, but the brain's not wired to respond to those kinds of structures. So ADHD coaching dismantles all of the conditioning that we've been told we should be able to do, we ought to be able to do, and offers people a way to reframe their beliefs about themselves, because they will have compounded all those negative messages and created a script about themselves that they've learned, and often that script will be holding them back. So what we do is we neutralise the language around ADHD and offer a new solution, offer a new way of thinking to reframe negative thought patterns and negative self-beliefs. And what you find is when people start seeing themselves in a different way and telling different stories about themselves and believing those stories, it unlocks a mental freedom and a lightness in people to release themselves from shame and then to consider what might be possible moving forward, knowing what they know about ADHD. And most of it is having self-awareness and knowing what's working for their brain and knowing what's not. And we explore that together. So you don't bash your head against the window, keep trying to do the thing that doesn't work and then feeling ashamed of that. We try new things and we meet the path of least resistance. It's not about trying to cure ADHD, because it can't be cured and it must be embraced. It's a wonderful thing to have, but it's just about using it in a way that involves self-compassion and being kind to yourself and actually using it as a gift, because it can be that ADHDers have tremendous talents, but they've always been conditioned to ignore them and just try and perform life in a neurotypical structure, which just clearly doesn't work.
I think it's so reassuring that you walk us through a bit the whole process and coaching in general, so people know what to expect, more or less, right?
Yeah, it's about acceptance, it's about self-compassion, and it's about personal growth as well. And that doesn't need to be a huge step, that doesn't need to be a massive thing. It can just be, for once in your life, feeling good about yourself and letting go of self-esteem and just being comfortable to describe yourself as a person with ADHD and what that means for you. One thing I'd like to mention about coaching for ADHDers is that it should never be advice. Your coach isn't there to give you advice on how to live a better life. It's not a magic bullet. What coaching should offer someone with ADHD is an opportunity to try and find the tools that work by themselves. And in doing so, that gives an ADHD a tremendous sense of empowerment, that they can find the answers themselves. And for so many years, you might have been feeling powerless. You might have noticed patterns of behaviour in your life that you couldn't fix, and other people in your life might have made you feel ashamed about that, like being late or being disorganised or being messy or not having a great memory. And you might have internalised those messages and think, well, I'm always late, I'm hopeless at this and I'm useless and I can't I can't ever be on time, and I'm always unable to do the things other people say I should be able to do easily. And coaching offers you a different perspective on ADHD so that you can pick and choose some tools out of the toolbox to enable you to thrive with ADHD and tell yourself a different story and believe a different narrative about yourself.
I think it's very important to have the acceptance. I think life becomes much easier when you know what to do in your life. And I'm not saying that you really need coaching throughout your whole life, but there are some periods we are talking about now that having someone on board can be so powerful and life-changing.
Yeah, just speaking to someone who gets it is so validating.
True.
And just to be given language to describe what you're experiencing. When I was diagnosed, I felt, for my whole life, I felt at odds. I knew something didn't feel right. I've always known something didn't quite feel right, and I just didn't have language to describe it. So I ignored it and just thought I'm being silly. And I'd had episodes of poor mental health throughout my life, and I just always felt like something was not quite there. And to be given language and power to talk about my experience, and then to meet other people who've been through my experience who are exactly the same as me, made me feel so validated, because I felt less isolated, less alone. And actually, I got to know myself better through meeting other people who'd had the same experience. And it was tremendous, because when you realize that's not just you, and you're not going crazy, and there's nothing wrong with you, you don't need to be fixed, and you don't need to feel bad about yourself, and there's language to describe it. When you're going through this huge seismic shift in your identity in midlife, you do need somebody with you who just gets it and just allows you to explore those feelings and then arrive at a new version of yourself that you feel comfortable with. And this is the first time in my life I felt comfortable in my own identity. And there's so many women who've said the same thing to me, and that's huge. That opens up so many limitless possibilities about what you're going to do with your life afterwards. What next? And it's, rather than it's being scary, it's really joyous, it's really hopeful and optimistic when you understand and accept yourself in the most authentic version of you.
This is so powerful. Thank you so much, Hatty. What surprised you the most when you're working with women like yourself?
The thing I find most surprising is when you see the missed potential in women, that potential, they never realized it in themselves. I suppose it's maybe not as surprising, it's just really sad, because when you have an ADHD come to you and you can see they have tremendous strengths and talents and capability, but they don't believe it in themselves, it is just very surprising that they haven't seen that before. And coaching can really bring that out of them and make them believe it themselves. The main feature of ADHD is it kind of deceives you, it gaslights you. It wants you to believe that you're rubbish at things, that you're useless, that you're not capable. And when you see people who have this tremendous talent and capability and potential, the surprise in themselves when they realize, and then they decide what they're going to do with it next, that is a wonderful, wonderful freedom for them to be fully in control of their future and realize that potential. And a lot of the time, because they were missed at school, they were never encouraged to do anything with their talent. They were just encouraged to follow typical academic pathways or fit into neurotypical work structures. So when you have an ADHD woman who has a creative gift, or a gift for connecting with people or making people feel valued or doing something that is on their terms, the surprise for them is that they can actually live their lives that way without feeling ashamed of doing something that they're really, really good at and that they really love. So that's a tremendous surprise for them.
What are some specific areas where your clients often see transformations?
Specific areas would probably be to do with regulation of their energy. As women, we do everything for everyone at 1,000,000 miles per hour. So the challenge is really to avoid being in a burnout state. Lots of women will, as a side effect of ADHD, suffer from anxiety because their nervous systems are so highly attuned to doing too much because they can't regulate that energy, they can't slow down. So one of the things that I really see very common in women is the inability just to stop and to look after themselves and to create space in their lives. Because when you bring the brain into alignment with the body, you understand what your needs are as a person with a hidden difference, a hidden disability. But unless you understand what your needs are, you won't look after yourself. So what that means is you have to slow down in order to know what you need. And that's one of the things a lot of ADHDers who are in crisis, they can't do that. They don't understand about regulation, and they don't understand that their brain is underdeveloped in its ability to regulate. So they will be having racing thoughts, they will be anxious, they will be having spiraling negative self-beliefs, and they learn that about themselves. They get stuck in that place, and it feels very lonely and hopeless. So regulation is the thing that underpins our emotions, which is our relationships, and also a physical regulation as well, not doing too much. And that's the thing that we as women are prone to doing way too much, beyond what is reasonably expected and what's reasonably possible. So I would imagine regulation is the thing that crops up a lot in coaching.
We said that we definitely would like to cover positives of having ADHD, and let's maybe dive into this a bit. Have you got anything in mind? Obviously we need to be confidential, you can't say anything in particular, but have you got anything you are thinking about regarding your coaching? What was really successful, any story or any successful client, or combine few?
Well, I work with a lot of business owners. And one of the things I noticed in one of my business owners was this tremendous capability for joining the dots and facilitating collaborative partnerships. And their business absolutely thrived because they had this incredible ability to spot opportunity. And that's very typical of ADHDers. Because our heads move so fast, we are nature's hunter-gatherers. We are prone to finding solutions to problems before other people have got out of bed. We are naturally wanting to connect people and connect with people and create new communities and new opportunities and excitement, because our brains are wired for novelty and fun and challenge. Business owners will bring that into their skill set naturally. So you find ADHDers are fantastic in leadership roles as well, because we have so much empathy. And I've worked with business owners who have wonderful teams of people who are very loyal to them, and that's testament to these qualities in them, being able to bring people together and being very empathetic to people's needs, because they're very switched on to their own needs as well. So very empathetic, very big-hearted, wear their heart on the sleeve, big feelings driven by their intuition. And that's quite brave in business. You have to have a gut feeling and stick to your guns. And another thing, the people I work with, all the qualities they all display are a fierce determination to improve and to bring others with them on that journey. So that's a very typical ADHD trait, the desire to learn. ADHD brains love challenge, they love to learn. So these are qualities that make business owners very, very successful. And you're in good company if you're an ADHD business owner. Richard Branson has ADHD. There's lots of people, lots of brains in Silicon Valley, which are all neurodivergent brains. We think in a way where we join the dots where other people might miss that. And I think that's a quality to be really celebrated, which makes us natural business owners. So I've seen tremendous success in people when they just believe in their ability and don't doubt themselves. And I think a lot of the self-doubt is just things they've learned through not knowing about ADHD, not knowing how they were wired. They're sort of square peg in a round hole, or feeling less than, or feeling that they couldn't measure up. And it's not that at all. It's just that their brains were way too fast. Other people couldn't catch up with them, and that's what was going on. So when you unravel it all and you come to this place of self-acceptance, then those qualities, you can really harness those qualities in business. And there's so many more. We're very creative people as well. We're very connected people. We unfortunately have something called rejection sensitivity as part of our DNA, and that means we're so timid about upsetting people. We're so nervous of having any adverse judgment coming our way that we are people pleasers, relentless people pleasers. So that can cause issues with boundaries, But what that can do in business is mean that we only want to deliver the very best service, and we won't stop until we've gone the extra 10 miles to make sure that our clients are happy. So there's many challenges with ADHD, but there's so many positives, especially for business owners.
I believe there is so many people who will just now listen and be like, wow, it's nothing to be ashamed of. What would you say to potential clients who are feeling very overwhelmed, thinking if they should have coaching, they're scattered? Like, what would you tell them to make them feel better and just to show them that there is a light in the tunnel?
What I would say to anyone who's feeling overwhelmed and not sure if coaching is right for them is to just give it a try. You don't have to commit to something long term, but normally what I find with people who are apprehensive about something they haven't done before is if they experience it once, they will appreciate having that space just to be themselves with somebody who gets it. And there's nothing so wonderful as actually having a space that's just for you, a psychological safety, an hour of time where you can just stop and explore your thoughts and feelings. And then if you want to continue, build that into something. But just a lot of the time ADHDers will come to me and they have never ever had somebody just listen. And it could just be as simple as that. It's completely led by the coachee. We don't have frameworks, we don't have things that we're trying to outcomes and goals. There's no pressure at all. But just to have a safe place where you can relax and explore ADHD and identify areas in your life where you may want to improve and things may have slipped and you appreciate you'd like to be better at, you'd like to improve, we can focus on those areas. But it's really just about helping the coachee find solutions that work for them and connect them with the best parts of themselves, which they may have forgotten about. So we do something called strengths-based training, where we really connect someone with the very best version of themselves that may have been from a past event or a past period of their life where they've achieved incredible things, but ADHD has made them forget all about it, how wonderful they can be. So if you connect somebody with their true self, and then you get them to understand what it was in that situation that made them great and how they might be able to harness that moving forward and just maybe recreate some of that magic that they know is inside them, but they can't access because their minds feel scattered. It's about creating space, managing energy, and making sure somebody feels valued and able to value themselves.
What are your offerings? So you do coaching. Are there any other services which are included?
So I do one-on-one coaching,
but
I also offer group coaching. So this is groups of 6 business owners or women. I try to keep people as very similar interests to each other. And this is peer support as well as group coaching. So we will explore certain aspects of ADHD. So we learn about ADHD together, but we will also focus on the individual in these sessions. So people bring their own history, their own stories to the group. And just knowing that there's strength in numbers and just knowing that other people will have had the same experiences or can add their experiences and what's worked for them, you will find that's a really, really powerful setting to have coaching. And that's the thing that worked best for me as well. Just understanding that there was a bunch of people there who were just like me. And I learned so much from my group, and we're still in touch now. We're still great friends because they just get it. And just, you may not know other people in your life who have ADHD, and if you do, they might know a version of you that was masking before. So just to be able to relax and unmask in a space that's dedicated to you and ADHD is tremendously powerful.
I didn't realize that there is actually group coaching available. I thought it would make more sense only have one-to-one. But now, since you mentioned, yes, this must be very powerful, right? Especially when you are already on this journey where you are thinking that there is something going on, and as we said before, everyone is different. So bringing more people on board, I think, can be also very helpful. That's cool. Yeah, good to know.
Well, actually, I recommend people try both. Having one-to-one coaching is very much about the individual, and that can be the first time an ADHD has experienced a safe space to come and explore their feelings around ADHD, which can be a very personal and very introspective experience. When someone brings themselves as an ADHD into a group setting, suddenly when you meet other people and you understand how ADHD presents in other people as well, you deepen your understanding of ADHD itself, which can actually be beneficial for you when you think back to periods in your life where your symptoms may have presented differently. It helps to deepen that understanding. So also the thing that really helps about group setting is that you have the peer support as well. A lot of the time ADHDers, if they've just been diagnosed, will feel very isolated and very alone. They won't know other people with ADHD. They might just think that it's just been them all their lives feeling at odds with the world. So when you get to know other people in the coaching space, and it's a very personal journey for everybody, and people are very brave when they do these coaching groups, and it's entirely confidential, and we have an agreement between us to give each other psychological safety. That can be very empowering in itself, and people are vulnerable in that space, but they leave that space with new contacts, new friends. My coaching group, I'm still in touch with the people who I did this with, and it was very, very raw and very emotional to go through that, and it's very validating as well. And I would recommend both as a process of healing. Individual will pinpoint specific areas in your life, but group coaching is a very nurturing experience, and it's very validating, and it gives you ADHD friends. It gives you people in your life who just get it, who, if you're struggling one day or you're going through something, you can just say to them, this is what's happening for me, and they don't even ask questions, they don't judge you, they just get it. So that's what the main benefit of group coaching will bring to you.
Thank you for clarifying. Hatty, how people can find you?
I'm on Instagram as Positively Wired, which is positively_wired. I'm on Facebook as Positively Wired ADHD Coaching, and I also have a community on Facebook called Positively Wired ADHD Community.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We will post links and some pictures so people can find you even better, easier. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for coming and sharing your amazing experience.
Thank you so much for having me, for giving me this platform to help other ADHDers.
You are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.